The glass of wine slipped from my fingers as David's voice cut through our kitchen like a blade. I know you're having an affair, Sarah. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of shared dreams, late-night conversations, building a life together, and this is what it came to. Standing in our kitchen, both of us breathing hard, the space between us feeling like an ocean. David, what are you talking about? But even as the words left my mouth, I could see it in his eyes. He'd already decided. The jury was in, the verdict delivered. The money, Sarah, $15,000, gone, just gone from our savings account. His hands shook as he held up his phone, showing me our banking app. You think I'm stupid? You think I wouldn't notice? My heart hammered against my ribs. The money. Of course it was about the money. I can explain. Can you? His laugh was bitter, hollow. Because I've been trying to figure out how my wife, who supposedly loves me, who supposedly supports my dreams, could drain our savings account without saying a word. And then it hit me. You're funding someone else's life, aren't you? The accusation hung in the air between us like smoke. I watched David's face, this man I'd loved since college, transform into someone I barely recognized. The paranoia had been building for weeks. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls, the way I'd quickly close my laptop when he walked into the room. From his perspective, I could see how it looked. The secretive behavior, the missing money, the distance I'd been keeping. But he had no idea what I'd actually been doing. David, if you would just listen. I'm done listening. His voice cracked. I'm done being played for a fool. Tomorrow I'm going to find out exactly what you've been hiding. He stormed out, leaving me alone with the shattered wine glass and the weight of everything he didn't know. The next morning, I left for work with a knot in my stomach that felt permanent. David had barely looked at me over breakfast, his jaw set in that way that meant he'd made up his mind about something. When I kissed his cheek goodbye, he flinched. I sat in my car for 5 minutes before starting it, wondering if I should just tell him everything, but I'd come this far. After 3 months of careful planning, of sacrificing, of working extra hours to make this happen, I couldn't give up now. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Working from home today. Need to catch up on some things. My stomach dropped. David never worked from home unless he was sick, and I knew exactly what he planned to catch up on. The day crawled by. Every email alert made me jump. Every phone call felt like the one where David would confront me with whatever he thought he'd found. I kept checking my laptop remotely, watching for any signs that he'd accessed it. By lunch, I couldn't focus on anything. My assistant, Maria, finally asked if I was feeling okay. Just some stuff at home, I told her, which felt like the understatement of the century. Around 3 o'clock, my phone rang. David's name on the screen made my heart stop. We need to talk, he said when I answered. His voice was different. Quieter, but not calm, more like the quiet before a storm. David. Come home, now. The line went dead. I made an excuse to Maria about a family emergency and drove home faster than I should have, my mind racing through possibilities. Had he found my laptop password? Had he somehow accessed my email? Did he think he'd found evidence of an affair? The house was too quiet when I walked in. David was sitting at our kitchen table with my laptop open in front of him. His face was pale, almost gray, and his hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. David, I can explain. You can explain, he said slowly, his eyes never leaving the screen, how you've been secretly funding TechFlow Innovations for the past 6 months. My breath caught. TechFlow, the startup company David had dreamed about for 2 years but never had the capital to launch. The reason I'd been working overtime, taking on freelance projects, carefully moving money without him noticing. You can explain, he continued, his voice getting stronger but also more strained, how you've invested not just our $15,000, but apparently $37,000 total into a company I've never even heard of? He finally looked at me, and I saw something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, hurt, but also something else. David. And you can explain. His voice cracked now. Why, according to these investment documents, you own 60% equity in TechFlow Innovations, a company that appears to be. He trailed off, staring at the screen again. It appears to be exactly the tech startup I've been dreaming about for years. Down to the product specifications, down to the business model, down to the target market research I did last summer. My hands were shaking now. This wasn't how I'd planned for him to find out. Sarah, his voice was barely a whisper, what the hell is TechFlow Innovations? I sat down across from him, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. 3 months of careful planning, and it was all coming out like this, not the way I'd imagined it. Not the surprise I dreamed of giving him. It's your company, David. The words hung in the air between us. David's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, something that might have been hope, then back to confusion. That's impossible. I never started a company. I never filed any paperwork. I did. My voice was steadier now. I filed the paperwork. I set up the LLC. I've been working with lawyers for months to structure everything properly. David's mouth opened, then closed. He looked back at the laptop screen, scrolling through emails I'd thought he'd never see. The money, he said finally. The money I've been saving, working extra projects, freelance work you didn't know about. I've been building capital to fund your startup. But why didn't you? Because you would have stopped me. I leaned forward, finally able to say what I'd been holding inside for months. David, you've spent 2 years talking about this business idea. 2 years researching and planning and dreaming, but also 2 years making excuses about why you can't start it. Not enough money, not the right time, too risky. His face flushed. Those aren't excuses, Sarah. Those are legitimate concerns. I know they are. That's why I decided to remove them. David stared at me like I'd spoken another language. The 60% equity, I continued. That's not me taking over your dream. That's me protecting us financially while still giving you operational control. You'll run the company. You'll make the decisions, but if something goes wrong, if the business fails, we won't lose everything. You've been planning this for months, he said slowly. The late nights, the phone calls, the secrecy. I've been talking to lawyers, accountants, investors, setting up the legal structure, researching your market analysis to make sure the business plan was solid before I put our money into it. David was quiet for a long time, scrolling through more emails. I watched his face as he read correspondence with business attorneys, reviewed financial projections, saw the careful planning that had gone into turning his dream into something real. You thought I was cheating, I said finally. The money was gone. You were being secretive. You were distant. His voice was raw now. What else was I supposed to think? You were supposed to trust me. The words came out sharper than I meant them to, but they were true. 10 years of marriage, and his first assumption when money went missing was that I was betraying him. Sarah. David closed the laptop and looked at me directly for the first time since I'd gotten home. I thought I was losing you. Something in his voice broke the anger I'd been carrying. The hurt, the frustration, the months of careful secrecy. It all crumbled when I saw the genuine fear in his eyes. You weren't losing me, David. I was trying to give you everything you wanted. But why like this? Why couldn't you just talk to me? I took a deep breath. This was the part I'd been dreading. Because every time you talked about starting the business, you'd get excited for about 10 minutes, and then you'd start listing all the reasons it wouldn't work. Not enough capital, too competitive, wrong timing. And I watched you talk yourself out of it over and over again. David's jaw tightened. Those are real concerns. They are, and I addressed them. I found investors who are interested in your product. I researched the market more thoroughly than your initial analysis. I worked with a business attorney to structure the company in a way that minimizes our personal risk. Investors? David's voice was strained. I opened my laptop and pulled up another folder. 3 potential investors who want to meet with you once the company is officially launched. They've seen your product specifications and market research. They're interested in funding expansion. David stared at the screen. How did they see my product specifications? I shared them, with your permission listed as pending. Sarah, those were private notes. They weren't ready for investors. They were brilliant, David. Your ideas, your research, your vision, they were ready. You just didn't think they were. The kitchen fell silent again. David rubbed his face with both hands and I could see him processing everything. The accusation of an affair, the discovery of the missing money. The realization that instead of betraying him, I'd been working for months to make his dreams possible. I accused you of cheating, he said finally. You did. I was ready to. I was going to ask you to leave. My chest tightened. Were you? I had the conversation planned out. I was going to tell you I knew about the money, give you a chance to confess, and then ask you to move out while we figured out divorce proceedings. The word divorce hit me like cold water. Even suspected of cheating, even with money missing, I hadn't imagined it would go that far. But instead, you found out I'd been working to fund your startup. Instead, I found out my wife has been secretly building the business I was too scared to build myself. Something in his voice made me look at him more carefully. The initial shock was wearing off, but what was replacing it wasn't gratitude or excitement. It was something more complicated. David, what's wrong? You don't trust me, he said quietly. What? You don't trust me to make my own decisions about my own business. You went behind my back because you decided I was making the wrong choices. I felt my own anger flare. I went behind your back because I was tired of watching you give up on yourself. That wasn't your decision to make. Wasn't it? We're married, David. Your dreams are my dreams. Your success is my success. If I see you holding yourself back because of fears that I can help you overcome, why wouldn't I try to help? Because it's my business, my risk to take or not take. With my money, too. The words hung between us like a challenge. David's expression sharpened. So that's what this is about? Control? No, that's not. You put up the money. You own 60%. You make the decisions about investors and lawyers and business structure. I get to be the face of the company you built. David, that's not fair and you know it. Isn't it? He stood up, pacing to the kitchen window. You've spent months making decisions about my business without me. You've committed us financially to something I never agreed to. You've brought in outside investors without asking me. How is that not about control? I stared at his back, feeling everything I'd worked for crumbling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be excited, grateful, proud that I believed in him enough to risk everything we had. The 60% equity, I said carefully, was to protect us legally. If you want to change that structure. It's not about the equity percentage, Sarah. He turned back to me. It's about the fact that you made unilateral decisions about our entire financial future without talking to me. Because you would have said no. So you decided to take away my right to say no? The question stopped me cold. Because he was right. I had taken away his right to refuse. I'd structured everything so carefully that by the time he found out it would be easier to move forward than to back out. I was trying to help, I said, but the words sounded weak even to me. You were trying to control. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was sad. Sarah, I know you meant well. I know you believe in me, and I'm grateful for that. But you can't just decide what's best for my life without me. We stood in our kitchen, the same space where he'd accused me of cheating 12 hours earlier, both of us realizing that the truth was more complicated than either accusation or vindication. So what do we do now? I asked. David sat back down, looking exhausted. I don't know. You've created a legal entity. You've committed our money. You've brought in potential investors. It's not like we can just pretend this didn't happen. We could move forward with the business. You could run it the way you always wanted to. Under the structure you created, with the investors you chose, with the financial obligations you agreed to. When he put it like that, it sounded manipulation rather than support. David, I never meant. I know. He looked at me across the table. I know you didn't mean to take over. I know you were trying to help me achieve what you thought I wanted. But Sarah, you didn't ask what I actually wanted. You wanted to start the business. I wanted to start a business. There's a difference between wanting something and being ready for it. I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of what I'd done settling over me. For months, I'd been so focused on solving David's problems that I hadn't stopped to consider whether he wanted them solved this way. The cheating accusation, I said finally. I was wrong. I'm sorry. But I was secretive, I was distant, I was making major decisions without you. David nodded slowly. We were both wrong, just in different ways. The sun was setting outside our kitchen window, casting long shadows across the table. David looked older than he had that morning, worn down by a day of emotional whiplash. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Anything." "When you were setting all this up, when you were working with lawyers and investors and making plans for my business, did you ever think about asking me what I wanted?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him that everything I'd done was based on careful consideration of his dreams and goals. But sitting there, looking at his tired face, I realized the truth was more complicated. "I thought I knew what you wanted," I said finally. "I thought I understood your goals better than you did. Because I was scared to pursue them. Because you were letting fear hold you back from something you really wanted. But what if the fear was telling me something important? What if I wasn't ready because I actually wasn't ready?" The question hung in the air. I'd been so sure that David's hesitation was just fear, that his concerns were just excuses. It hadn't occurred to me that maybe his instincts about timing and readiness were valid. "I wanted to give you everything," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know." David reached across the table and took my hand. "That's what makes this so hard. You did something incredibly generous and thoughtful and loving. And also something that completely overrode my autonomy." We sat in the growing darkness, both of us trying to figure out how to move forward. The business existed now, the money was committed, the legal structure was in place. Whether either of us had handled things perfectly, we were here now. "The investors," David said eventually. "Tell me about them." I pulled my laptop back over and opened the relevant files. 3 different groups. One is a venture capital firm that specializes in tech startups. Another is a small investment group that focuses on local businesses. The third is an angel investor who specifically looks for companies with innovative product development approaches. David reviewed the information, his expression focused but unreadable. "They're all legitimate," I continued. "I had our lawyer research each of them thoroughly. The terms they're offering are favorable, and none of them want controlling interest." "What do they know about me?" "They know your educational background, your work experience, and they've seen your product specifications and market research. They know you're the creative and operational force behind the company. But they think I was involved in setting up the business." I hesitated. I may have implied that we were working together on the legal structure. David looked at me sharply. "Implied how?" "I didn't explicitly say you weren't involved. When they asked about the business partnership, I said we were a team." "Sarah, that's misrepresentation." "It's an omission. It's lying to potential investors about the fundamental structure of the business they're considering funding." My face burned. He was right. In my effort to protect David from looking like he wasn't involved in his own company, I'd created a false impression with the investors. "We can clarify that when you meet with them," I said. "If I meet with them." The words hit me like cold water. After everything I'd done, all the work and planning and sacrifice, he might walk away from all of it. "David, you don't have to decide tonight. Take time to think about it. Review everything I've put together. See if there's a way to move forward that feels right to you." He nodded slowly. "I need time to process this. All of it. The accusation, the discovery, the business, the decisions you made. I need time." "How much time?" "I don't know. This is bigger than just deciding whether to start a business. This is about how we make decisions as a couple. This is about trust and communication and respect." I understood what he wasn't saying. This was about whether our marriage could survive this level of fundamental disagreement about autonomy and partnership. "I love you," I said, because it was the only thing I was completely sure of. "I love you too," David replied, "but I don't know if love is enough to fix this." We went to bed that night without any resolution. David set up his laptop in the guest room to review everything I'd put together for the business. I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my attempt to give David his dreams had cost me my marriage. The next few days passed in a strange suspended state. David was polite but distant. He reviewed all the business documents, asked thoughtful questions about the legal structure and financial projections, and took notes on everything. But he didn't give me any indication of what he was thinking or what he planned to do. I threw myself into work, staying late and taking on extra projects partly to give David space and partly to distract myself from the uncertainty at home. Every evening, I'd come home hoping for a conversation, a decision, some indication of where we stood. Instead, I'd find David reading or working on his laptop, cordial but unreachable. On Friday night, I found him in the kitchen making dinner. It was the first time since Tuesday that we'd been in the same room for more than a few minutes. "Can we talk?" I asked. David nodded, not looking up from the pasta he was stirring. "I've been thinking about what you said, about autonomy and decision-making and respect. And I think you're right. I overstepped. I made decisions that should have been ours to make together, regardless of how good my intentions were." David finally looked at me. "Thank you for saying that. I also think," I continued, my voice steadier now, "that you were wrong to immediately assume I was cheating when money went missing from our account." His jaw tightened slightly, but he nodded. "You're right, I should have talked to you first. So we both messed up. The question is whether we can figure out how to move forward." David turned off the burner and leaned against the counter. "I've been thinking about the business." My heart rate picked up. "And?" "It's brilliant, Sarah. The legal structure, the financial planning, the investor research. You've created something that could actually work. But I can't move forward with it the way it's currently set up." I felt my stomach drop. Because of the equity structure. Because of everything. The business needs to be something I choose to do, not something that was chosen for me. The investors need to understand exactly how this company was created and what my actual role has been. "David, if you tell them I set everything up without you, they might not want to invest." "Then they're not the right investors." His voice was firm. "Sarah, I can't build a business on a foundation of misrepresentation, even unintentional misrepresentation." I sat down at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of everything I'd worked for slipping away. "There might be another option," David said quietly. I looked up. "We could start over." "What do you mean?" "We could dissolve TechFlow Innovations and create a new company. Together, this time. Equal partners from the beginning. But all the work I've done, all the money we've invested, the time with lawyers and accountants, wouldn't be wasted. We'd use everything you've learned, all the research you've done, all the connections you've made, but we'd do it as partners making decisions together." I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. It would mean admitting to the current investors that the business had been misrepresented. It would mean starting the legal process over, restructuring everything, potentially losing some of the opportunities I'd created. But it would also mean moving forward together, instead of with me always wondering if David really wanted the life I'd created for him. "Equal partners," I said. 50-50 equity? Equal partners. Shared decision-making. Full transparency with investors and everyone else we work with. And if you decide you're not ready? If you want to wait another year or two?" David was quiet for a moment. "Then we wait. But Sarah, if we do this, we do it because we both choose it, not because circumstances or other people's expectations push us into it." I thought about the months I'd spent carefully crafting David's future, the hours of research and planning and sacrifice. Part of me felt frustrated at the idea of dismantling something I'd worked so hard to build. But a bigger part of me felt something I hadn't expected: relief. "When would we start over?" I asked. "We'd announce the dissolution of TechFlow next week. I'd call each of the potential investors personally to explain the situation. If they're still interested in investing in a company we build together, we set up meetings. If not, we look for new investors who understand the real situation from the beginning. And if we can't find investors who want to work with us under those terms, then maybe we bootstrap the business ourselves. Start smaller, grow more gradually." That could take years. "It could," David agreed, "but it would be ours." We ate dinner that night planning the dissolution of the company I'd secretly created and the structure of the business we might build together. It felt strange to be dismantling months of work, but also oddly freeing. "There's something else we need to talk about," I said as we cleaned up the dishes. "The marriage stuff." I nodded. "David, I don't want to make unilateral decisions about our life together ever again. But I also don't want to be with someone whose first assumption when something goes wrong is that I'm betraying him. Fair, he said. So how do we fix that? Better communication, obviously, but also maybe we need to think about why we each reacted the way we did. David dried a plate slowly, thinking. I accused you of cheating because I was scared you were growing beyond me. You've been working more, taking on bigger projects, being more successful. Part of me worried that you were outgrowing our marriage. The confession surprised me. David, my success has nothing to do with how I feel about you. I know that intellectually. But when money started disappearing and you were being secretive, it fed into this fear that you were building a life that didn't include me. And I went behind your back with the business because I was scared you were holding yourself back and that I wasn't doing enough to help you succeed. So we were both acting out of fear. Different fears, but yeah. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence, both of us processing the recognition that our recent problems came from love and insecurity rather than malice or indifference. One more thing, David said as we headed upstairs. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For believing in me enough to risk our savings on my dreams. For working extra hours to make something happen that I was too scared to pursue. For caring enough about my success to sacrifice your own time and energy. I stopped on the stairs. David, I'm not saying I agree with how you did it, but I want you to know that I understand why you did it, and I'm grateful that you believe in me that much. We stood on our staircase, looking at each other across several days of hurt and misunderstanding and complicated love. I'll always believe in you, I said. I just need to get better at showing that in ways that don't override your own choices. And I need to get better at trusting that your choices are made out of love for us, not dissatisfaction with us. It wasn't a perfect resolution. We still had work to do on communication and trust and decision-making. We still had to actually dissolve one business and start another. We still had to figure out how to be partners in marriage and potentially in business without losing ourselves in the process. But for the first time in days, we went to bed together, and for the first time in months, neither of us was hiding anything from the other. 6 months later, David and I launched Meridian Tech Solutions. Equal partners, shared decision-making, complete transparency with our investors about how we'd gotten there. The company that emerged from our fresh start was smaller than what I'd originally envisioned, but stronger in ways that mattered more. We learned to have difficult conversations before making major decisions. We learned to trust each other's choices even when we didn't fully understand them. We learned that supporting each other's dreams meant being honest about our fears and limitations as well as our hopes and abilities. The business succeeded, but not in the way either of us had originally planned. Like our marriage, it became something better than what we could have created individually, stronger because it was built on a foundation of honest partnership rather than well-intentioned control. And every time we face a major decision now, we remember the kitchen conversation where David accused me of cheating and I revealed I'd been secretly funding his dreams. We remember how love without communication can create its own kind of betrayal, and how the best intentions can go wrong without the right foundation of trust and respect. We're partners now in every sense of the word, equal, honest, and finally on the same page about the life we're building together.